Degenerates, we have good news.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
Well, good news for me at least, but after watching this video and hopefully after playing this VN, you will think it will be good news as well. Since today, as of recording, is my birthday, I thought it would be nice to make it a bit more special and post a video regarding one of my favorite era games. Oh, this could be a long video, so I want to apologize in advance. And looking at my script here, it's gonna be pretty long. That's what she said. Evenicle's world structure seemed very interesting when I first played it, around 4 years ago, and I still love it now. Basically speaking, it's a world where humanity follows two simple rules. First, one must not kill another human, and second, one can only have one partner for life. That means, yes, you can only bang one person. These rules were created by the first human to exist, called Eve, who is worshipped as Holy Mother Eve because she created everything. Okay, that might sound confusing, but I'll just give it to you straight. Basically speaking, it's God who created Eve, and then Eve created the world. Are you following? So if you by any chance break one of these rules, you will be casted out as an outlaw, and you will get one of these black rings on one of your fingers. And then you won't be able to sustain yourself. For example, you can't cook because the food will rot. You can't farm because the seeds won't sprout. And you can't grow farm animals because they will just die. Inevitably, this means that you as an outlaw will die as well. So, how would you survive being an outlaw? Well, doing outlaw stuff. Raid, pillage, steal, and even word that rhymes with tape. However, there are people who are exempted from those two rules, while still keeping Mother Eve's blessings, which are the knights. They are allowed to kill and have multiple partners, which brings us to the MC. He starts off as a normal person, so he's limited to one wife, but he wants to marry his twin sisters, so he sets out to become a knight. The world is set in a mixed bag of medieval and industrial era. Like, for example, you fight with swords and lances and magic, but at the same time you have TV, which they call Magivision. And in the fantasy sense, don't worry, they have their own version of dwarves and elves, in addition to these cactus-looking beings called hennies, which are just annoying in general. Anyway, speaking of characters, after my last video on White Album 2, a fellow degenerate of mine recommended that I should explain a little bit more on the characters involved, so here we go. For the main characters, we have the damn lucky bastard of an MC, dumb curvy fat material, rebellious yet caring princess, a lolly, oh god, this is an 18 plus game, and then the tsundere flat chest. Yo, here's one woman that has a grown body but not a curvy chest. Okay, Aster here is a man with simple needs. He wants to f*** cute girls, that's it. Like, if he wasn't limited by Mother Eve's rules, he would just bang every girl out there. But he's not completely all sex for brains. He's a gentleman. He does care for the girls and their feelings. But to be honest, he's dumb and dense sometimes. Though it's nothing compared to these two. This guy here is denser than a periodic table combined, while this guy is just denser than a black hole. Aster will get serious when he needs to, and not a moment before. But actually his seriousness is dumb, which is likable in a sense. Here is an example of his seriousness.
Bruh.
What did I tell you? Simple needs, simple goals. Ramis is a knight who is dumb as well. She's a meathead. She can't do anything besides fighting and a word that rhymes with horn. No, I'm not saying that she's a performance artist. I'm just saying that she likes to read a lot. And she's very open about her sexuality, though a bit too much at times. But hey, with a wife like that, having a body like that, I can't really complain. Next, we have Riche, who is a mage and a princess. She has a rebellious personality when it comes to the topic of her being a princess. But she's actually a very considerate waifu. She cares for the other girls like a mother, but she could also be jokingly and cheeky sometimes. Alright, we should be going to jail for this, but here we have a lolly, Gorigura, who is an orphan and a ranger, a type of knight that specializes in speed and assassinations. Basically speaking, she's a ninja, but without the Kagebunshin no Jutsu. She's cute, she's like a cat, she's kawaii. To me, I don't really like complete twin tails. They're not my preferred hairstyle for a waifu, but Grigra here is just cute, man, still cute. And her personality is being cute, like a cat, a fucking cat. Well, I don't really mind a cute personality in a story for the sake of the story, but I do mind when it comes to picking best girl. And as for the last of the main characters, we have Catherine, or Cath for short. She is a knight who specializes in support tactics because she is a self-proclaimed genius who is actually smart. Surprisingly, I like Catherine the most despite her being a tsundere, which is weird to say because I don't really like tsunderes in general. She doesn't abuse the MC like punching him straight to the moon or something, but she does hit him sometimes when she's being teased. That is quite normal for a tsundere, right? She is shy, but she is aware of her feelings, and she can be the most serious in the group due to her intellect, which makes her the most reliable in the harem and likable to me. Oh, and did I mention that she's flat? It's okay! Hori-san is flat as a board too! As for the side characters, I don't want to explain them because that would be too spoiler-ish, so I will just briefly describe them, and I will only include some of the characters shown in the cover photo. So, we have a lovable and innocent traveler who loves to go around the world and care deeply for children, the half-poppin who is very cheeky and open about her sexuality, MILF, do I even need to describe her? The responsible and caring office lady, another lolly, oh my god, but I really like her a lot because she is cheeky and arrogant, but in a lovable way. Another arrogant character who is a noblewoman following the trope. The twin sisters of the MC who took care of him before the beginning of the story. And finally, best girl. MILF and One-chan material in one, the best of both worlds. The mother-like figure who is still a personal preference, but I welcome those who have played to fight me. The last three characters are my top favorite for the side characters, but Croix, actually how do you pronounce her name? Fine, Croix is the best girl even among the main characters. And as for the other side characters, I'm afraid you have to play it in order to find out. Speaking of playing, since I played the VN around 4 years ago, I decided to play it again to relieve the memories and to time myself. And I time myself during the VN parts of the game, meaning that I when I read the story instead of playing the game. And it was 22 hours, 33 minutes, and 30 seconds. Damn, I should have waited 3 seconds for a nice score. It's kind of weird to get this playtime because in VNDB it was listed as like very long, 60 hours or something. So I think it's probably included with the grinding time or something. But then again, I also like to read fast, so yeah, you take it as you will. Take note that my timer includes all the side stories, side quests, and the fun parts. Even the lolly ones. FBI, open up! But let's save that for later, in the later part of the video, because we saved the best discussion for last, as usual. Okay, I would like to separate this video into like two sections, separating the game aspects from the VN. So now let's talk about the technical stuff first, the game and its mechanics. The translation is fine, readable English, but there are some minor mistakes, like for example, the word it's, IT''s, is typed as I''ts. It's probably what, typing too fast kind of error. And there is one point where the grammar showed "n-herb" instead of "a-herb." I mean, it's not a bad translation overall, but during these rare mistake moments, my inner grammar national socialism just gets disturbed. Speaking of translation, you can actually customize the color of your text, differentiating between unread and read text. But for me, I just leave everything on white. And finally, there is something that is improved on the sounds page. There is no more character discrimination, no more muting individuals. Instead, there's just voices in general, men voices, and women voices. This feature is a massive improvement, so thumbs up there. Now, some peeps would like better graphics, then this isn't really what you're looking for. The art style is cartoonish, so graphics is obviously not the main point of the game. You will have map movement in chibi form, which just shows the MC. And there are no NPC objects in the map, just some inanimate animals depending on the region you're in. Like here we have some cows and here we have some cute salamanders. There are chests laying around the map which spawn skills, items or gold. Other things that lay around are these annoying traps, which are pieces of shit. You can't normally see them, especially if you're moving, but they do have this animation to notify you where they are. Regardless, I fell victim to them occasionally despite having played the game several times. They either cut down your whole party's HP by 10% or drop your BP, we'll talk about BP later on, or spawn a monster battle. Next, there are some landmarks identified by this blinking animation thingy. Just walk to it and you'll get some story scene about that particular landmark. And this mechanic is considered to be a collectible since there are 100 of them in the world, and for each 10 you visit, you get an item from the twin sisters. After that, we have these floating heart icons that represent wholesome side stories between Aster and his wives. Then, these bug-looking things are consumable items which will upgrade your supplementary points, like evasion, critical, and accuracy. I'll explain about them later on. There are also these fountain things where you can restore your entire party's HP to the max. Other than that, we have the cities. Each nation has around 2 to 4 cities in them, with the name of the nation being the name of the capital itself. And when you enter a different region, the music changes to suit to that particular region. Here are the examples. When you enter a city, this pop-up will show. You will have an inn for your autosaves and there will be unique story scenes for your first stay in a new city. Consequent stays become redundant story scenes. Then we have the item shop, which sells weapons and armor, as well as buff and healing items. As for the weapons and armor, the stats will show, so you will know if you're buying better or worse gear based on the gear you're already equipped, but the buff items don't, which is weird. But not really a problem. And speaking of weird, some items are weird in terms of design, like what the f is this or this. But the naming scheme and the description of the weapons or the items in general are fun. Next, the pawn shop, to sell stuff, that's simple. Oh, by the way, the currency used is gold. And then the leveling shop, the name speaks for itself. In here, a waifu will level you up through this weirdly cute chanting. And there are story scenes with her as you progress your level, story scenes that involve loot content as well. You will not level up automatically when you're moving around the map, but there is a consumable item which allows you to level up on the go. And as usual, leveling up restores your health to max. Next, we have the church, which basically gives you some story scenes about Mother Eve since it's a religion to worship her. And these churches in the cities are part of a side quest. If you visit them in the correct order, you get rewarded by the saints. Rewarded. After that, the gather info section, which you could learn about the game mechanics itself. It'll help you on your first playthrough because unfortunately, there's not a damn tutorial in this game. I didn't know what the f I was doing when I first played it. But thankfully, the gameplay was simple to get used to. Then we have the status page, which speaks for itself, to view your party status and skills. But you could also view them by clicking your character icon when you're traveling. At some point in the game, you also get a board ship button to travel across the sea, but this button is only limited to cities by the sea. Duh. You could also travel through a hot air balloon by accessing these points. They give you access to regions unreachable by foot, and like the ship, you get to access the hot air balloon at some point in the game. Moving back to the cities, take note that only the capitals have pawn shops and only some cities have the item shops, leveling shops, and churches. And not all item shops have weapons and armor, but all cities have an inn for autosaves. Now, let's move on to the battle stuff. First, the status. Quite typical for a JRPG, we have the level, the EXP earned / EXP required to level up, current HP / max HP, attack points, which does physical damage, magic points, defense, speed, and all this stuff. Now, I didn't know what some of these mechanics were when I first played because there is no goddamn tutorial, so I had to Google it and explain it to you guys here in case you guys didn't know. Attack and magic points deal damage to reduce HP. Defense points subtract the attack points of the enemy, which only limits physical attacks, so it doesn't do shit against magic attacks. Speed affects how soon and how frequent that character gets to act in a battle. I'll explain later on in the gameplay segment. Accuracy percentage is, well, accuracy, which goes together with evasion, which is obviously evasion. Some monsters have evasion, so you should equip higher accuracy gear to prevent them from dodging. Shock percentage is the stun. Endurance is the counter to that, meaning higher endurance lowers the chance of the character getting stunned themselves or even poisoned. Critical does higher damage. Duh. Multi-hit means you get to hit twice and just twice in one attack. Magic resist reduce magical damage. Also duh. And EXP percentage is... Do I need to explain this? On the top right, you see the close button to exit the page. Below that will be the equipment slots for your characters, weapon, armor, and item. On the bottom left, there is a skill point counter and change skills button. In the skills page, you'll access 4 different categories: physical attack, magic attack, support, and abilities. The first 2 are obvious. Support skills and ability skills are for buffing purposes. But the difference is that support skills are more on the active side of skills, while the ability page is more on the passive skills. Alright, gameplay. In battle, you will enter this UI, which is simple. Monsters shown here with their names and HP hovering above them, and if you have the display info skill equipped, you can see the characteristic as well as the weakness of the monsters. Down here shows your party stats, your equipped skills, the action sequence of the battle, and the auto battle feature. Battle is relatively simple. If you want to do a physical attack without any buffing skills, just simply click on this rotating attack button and you will deal damage. Turning on the auto battle feature will just do these simple attacks until either your party or the monsters die. If you want to use a skill, just click on the skill you want and just click on the monster or party member that you wish to apply the skill on. Skills are based on this mechanic called battle points, or BPs for short, and as you can see in the party status, you will have a max of 5 BPs, and each character will get 1 BP when their turn to act comes up, and the BP requirement for each skill will be shown on the skills buttons themselves. If you noticed, there's like a layout for both your party and the monsters. For melee characters like Aster, Ramius, and Gurigura, you can only target the front row of monsters since they're melee. Ranged characters like Riche and Catherine, on the other hand, can target anyone. This concept doesn't apply to your party though, because monsters can still attack your backline even if your front line is still at full HP, which is weird to me. But I guess it would be too easy of a game if we get the same fair treatment, right? The whole battle follows this action sequence here. The character will only get to act when his or her or its icon reaches the most left. So what is this kind of game? Turn-based? I don't fucking know, just tell me in the comment section. These icons show the buff status and they hit a max of 4. The sword shows attack buff while the shield and turtle shell show defense buff. But you get the turtle buff by using this waiting mechanic, which means your character skips a turn. Next, you also have debuff effects. This shows your stun for 1 turn. This shows your poisoned, which lasts several turns. And this shows that you're petrified, which also means you're stunned, but instead it lasts several turns. And take note that the debuff effect acts according to the affected character's turn, not the others. This icon shows that the character will unleash a critical strike on the next turn if you attack. So crits are still RNG, but they will take effect only in the next turn. Take note though, monsters can do crit damages too. And speaking of monsters, they have their own buff icons. They can also be buffed like the party, but they have 2 more mechanics. One is a rage mechanic, at which the monster will deal higher damage when compared to normal monsters, and the other icon is a charging state. This mechanic depends on the monster. Say, for example, if it's a human assassin, it will likely be an assassination attempt, which is an instant kill. Others may be healing or AoE damage. In order to get into a battle, you will need to just walk around until this bar here gets full, and then you will automatically be sent into battle. But you could also go to these red spiky orbs floating around, which gives you 1.5 times the XP of a normal battle. But the monsters here spawned from these orbs are more or less similar to the regular monsters spawned by the bar. In addition, there are also some purple smokes in some regions, which triggers a relatively difficult monster battle, so I recommend staying away from them until your party is satisfyingly strong. The monsters vary from doodles to gal monsters to tentacles. And if you want to go for the endgame stuff, there are several optional bosses around the world, ranging from a crab to a Gundam, and hell, even a box. Though fighting each of them requires a different tactic than the other. You still get to roam the world even after you finish the game, so don't worry if you didn't fight these bosses beforehand. One nice thing I like about the game is that if you've forgotten what to do or where to go, just stand still in the movement view and these text boxes will appear to remind you, or just say random stuff said by the characters themselves. It's a small feature, but I do appreciate that. Another thing I like is these 4 customizable buttons. They're like shortcuts which you could customize in the field menu. As it says, you could select up to 4 shortcuts. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, in this section here in the bottom right, where we have the chapter progress bar, the chapter number and title, the amount of current goal, and the love gauge. Now, this thing here is pretty fun. Once it has been filled up, you're able to go back to your house to play the side stories of each wife that you have. Yes, including the fun parts. In addition, you get skill points respective to the wives and items. The thing is though, you need to go back to your house to play those story scenes, which might be a hassle, but at some point of the game you will get access to teleportation magic, which you could use to transport the party to cities and to your home as well. Nice enough for a fast travel mechanic. And the last mechanic that I want to explain is these notification icons laying around the map. There are 2 versions. This red one shows a boss fight, while this green one shows a story event. So, since we've reached the story events, let's move on to the VN part of the game. I gotta say, there are some faults to be found in this Arrow game. So let's just get on with the bad stuff first and then later move on to the good parts. First of all, to me, I don't think the MC has a character development. Even if it did, I think it's kind of minor. This case could be considered bad to most people, so I don't plan on sugarcoating it. Hell, even supporting characters have better character development. Secondly, there were some lines that have the wrong kind of facial expressions. Like, this is not my opinion. I mean, it is my opinion, but it's also my common sense talking. Like, this is just basic common sense. Like, take for example, you have a character who is screaming in pain and shouting, but the expression shows that he's smiling. What the f***? Like, bro, f***ing up a small detail like that is just dumb. Honestly, it's just dumb. As for the antagonists of the story, well, I'll be honest, they're not really that impactful to me. Which is kind of sad, to be honest, because you need like good villains in order to balance out good heroes. So yeah, I can't really say that they're that impactful to me, except for one. I really like one of them, and I like his development really well. But the rest, well, most of them, they just felt meh to me, like just meh, like there. So I don't know. I'm just saying my honest opinion, guys. Next, for the pacing of the story, it kind of gets ruined at some point, which just affects that particular chapter, and it's just me nitpicking, but I don't really like how they changed like the pacing in that chapter. And I think that they did that in order to include an onsen scene, which is quite normal, quite common in a Japanese story. But I think that they disrupted the pacing of that chapter by doing that. In other words, the onsen scene feels forced to me. It feels out of place. So yeah, I didn't particularly enjoy that one point in the chapter. So I mean, I wish that they postponed that onsen scene. It's fine to include it. I'm all for onsen scenes. They're great fan service. But I wish that they put it at the later part of the story. Of the chapter, because to me, I think it fits better there. It's like a conflict going on, but suddenly there's an onsen scene. It just feels unnatural to me. That being said, the disrupt in pacing for that chapter, the onsen scene, it made me appreciate Best Girl even more, for reasons I will not share. And lastly, the game is partially voiced. Like, less important scenes, they don't have voiceovers, so I didn't particularly enjoy that. Like, some of these scenes, they have humor. Not to say that I didn't laugh or grin at them, but having voiceovers gives off a better effect. So please, this is just me nitpicking, and I assume that they have budget constraints. But yeah, I just hope that they have voiceovers for all the scenes in future projects. Okay, I think that's pretty much all I have to complain about the story, about the VN parts at least. Are there other parts? Nah. So now for the good stuff. Aside from the previously mentioned particular chapter, the pacing overall was quite nice. I never got bored reading the normal scenes. Besides the pacing, I love the world building. Each aspect contributes to and affects the other pretty well. Like, for example, how the beliefs of religion was implemented in the story. Though it doesn't exactly follow religion, but it takes the idea of religion and then changes it a little bit for the sake of story writing. And yeah, I mentioned that the villains are not really that impactful to me, but the idea behind them, their motives for being the villains they are, coincides with that religious aspect. So they're not bad villains, which is weird to say because villains are supposed to be bad. But what I'm trying to say is they're decent. Gotta say though, the idea of using the religious aspects, it works pretty well. But I do find it kind of lackluster in the ending parts of the story. And speaking of the ending, it's good. It's very good. I really, really loved it. Though I have some issues with the CGs used for the ending scenes, but nah, that's just me nitpicking again, so don't mind it. Okay, to be honest, this is just me, but I think that the scenes are relatively short when compared to other VNs. I feel like I don't get satisfied enough when reliving myself reading these scenes, but well, they're short to me, but probably not to you guys. However, I do think that this downside, to me, this downside is compensated by the number of the scenes. Still, I can't really not complain because, okay, let's take Grisaya for example. Grisaya has a lot of scenes, a lot. In addition to having a lot of scenes, they are long. But regardless, Evenicle's fun scenes are still good. Okay, I say good, but there are some terrible stuff here, which includes a word that rhymes with tape and a word that sounds like lolly. So remember I talked about my playtime early in the video? Yes, I even played the lolly scenes. God, why? In my defense, I read like this. Protect lolly. Besides that, it's got a lot of genre, from vanilla and wholesome to BDSM and non-consensual, but I'll say more in the conclusion. Oh, and one more thing. I played the uncensored version, so it showed everything in its entirety. I gotta say, sometimes the illustrations of the penis looks weird, like just completely weird. Not all the time, but sometimes the penis is drawn like an arch, you know? It just looks weird. You know if you'll play it, but yeah. Alright, to conclude. To me, this era game is a great step into degeneracy. And that's why it's one of my top favorites in my collection. In a way, you could really see it as a unique game. Because in addition to being horny, it has a bunch of everything. It has variety. Take the girls for example. You have from lollies to milfs. Their personalities, from tsunderes to kuderes, light-skinned and dark-skinned. The horny stuff, they include a bit of every genre, NTR, word that rhymes with tape, BDSM, UB, and even monster tags. But they're balanced out with vanilla and wholesome. The bad stuff is not used excessively to me. I mean, it's used just enough to be considered necessary for the story. The bad tags contribute. They actually contribute to the protagonist. Now, I've mentioned that he doesn't really have a character development, and even if he did, it will be a small one. But him not having one actually works in this story. I like his simplistic ideals. I like his simple goals. Sure, he may be dumb and dense sometimes, but he is honest to heart and humble. His simple goal is to just get laid, and that could cause him to be horny, too horny sometimes. But he does restrain himself. He has moral values. He has common sense. He actually cares and values girls and their feelings. He may not know them at first glance, but very few people do. Speaking of which, that led to a misunderstanding with Natal here. I hate how she was treated in the story. I think that she deserves better and a better ending. Her character development is my personal favorite. Still, my favorite girl, the best girl, is and always will be Craw. But if limited to the main characters, then Catherine. Oh, and I forgot to mention the side stories. I definitely and wholeheartedly recommend them. You should play them even in your first playthrough, because to me, they're not optional, they are necessary. Their side stories just contribute a lot and give off a lot more meaning to the main story in general, and are, fulfilling like cream pies. And take note that some side quests, they're limited to respective chapters, meaning that if you didn't do them in that particular chapter, you won't be able to complete them in the next chapter. No complaints on the music used. The game is made by Alicesoft. Their OSTs are bangers, as supported by my fellow degens. Now then, the degen score. Well, the VN part will be a 9, and the gameplay is an 8, because, well, the bosses weren't really hard to begin with, so it wasn't really challenging for me. And 8 is the best I could give. So the total is 8.5. It's really high, right? So I recommend you should play it. Though to me, it could be a 69, because I got them love this VN, and in the courtesy of my fellow degens, I'll include their quotes. Alicesoft is such a strange company. I initially tried their games for the but stayed for the humor and charm their games always have. Alicesoft's usually a good example of join for the loot, stay for everything else from what I've seen. Anyway, that's all for me. If you've got opinions, feedbacks or suggestions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. It's time for me to enjoy my birthday. Later, degens.